thrilled with how you've reproduced it here. We knew we wouldn't be able to do it exactly the same, but you all have done a wonderful job, because I pretty much just brought you the stuff and said, here you go, and you've done a great job with it. I can see you've got everything from the cultural origins of Ghana's maritime cultural landscape, and all these photos, as far as I can see, are from R.G. Brown's collection that he donated from his time over there in 2004 and 2005. So it does tell a nice story about where these boats fit into the history of Ghana, because, as we like to say, boats don't operate in a vacuum. They are part of a system. They are part of the shores that it connects. And that shore may be the same one you left, but it takes folks from the hinterlands, and they're all part of that system that creates that boat. We think of a maritime history as being on the ocean or the lakes and the rivers, but when we think about that tree, the one you see on the wall back there, that boat started in the forest. But that is part of that maritime system as well. So all of this together, all the efforts of those trained and talented individuals in Ghana who knew what tree to get, what were the right characteristics, how to lay it out. I mean, that's information that comes from generation to generation. And so it's no surprise that you see, when you look at some of the early boats built in North America by the enslaved folks who were forced here, that you can still see evidence of that tradition. If you look at that canoe, and maybe don't have quite as much of a prow on the end of it, but that's going to be very similar to like the rice plantation canoes. The people who enslaved those folks from Africa knew that these people knew what they were doing, and left those decisions to them in terms of how to shape that landscape. And so it's just another example of a culture that perseveres through adversity. So yeah, I would say just start and go along. You can see the tools that they use. You can see the marks that they created in the wood there by my students. They selected the images. They wrote the text. I just got to sit back and say, yep, those are my students. I tell them that.
Itro kakamyo, minro kakamyo. Kakamyo mpo kwa mwasi anansyo. Itro kakamyo, minro kakamyo. Kakamyo mpo kwa mwasi anansyo. Odom sesre kusi anansi munomfwe. Anansi munomfwe.
That's a part of that spirit. That's part of that family compound that when we go and say, and I say this to you all also, Udu in you fi klein. Translation is, love will always find its way home. Love will always find its way home. Because what I pondered about, and I had said, and since we have the folks on Facebook, so I want y'all, I hope that y'all can hear me. I said to myself, I said, I know for a fact, when I think about Jackson, think about those people who wanted to make sure they were taking care of their family, that they stood on this side right here, and they said, Miyuni, 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 missing you, missing you, missing you. And what I said to myself, there was someone on the other side who said, Sokonayo, 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 I shall follow you, I shall follow you, I shall follow you. And I said, guess what? The legacy of Bojack coming from Africa, Mother Africa, Father Africa followed with that genius over here, that it not comes to Bullitt County, that we see the genius manifested. It's not by accident, just to throw it out there, but y'all understand, for you to have the battle in Gullah means boat. For you to have the boats here at Willow Hill, it's not by accident.
No, sir.
That what happened, it was divine, that with regards to Kurt and Alvin and King and them having a conversation, for the boats to come right here, for those boats to be right there in Georgia Southern in the IA building, that at times, Dr. Brian, I would see those boats, I'm like, how do they have them get land boats right there at Georgia Southern? And I'll go up the steps, but I see it. And I got envious about those boats being right there. So I'm like looking like, I need to have them boats.
Them boats.
People don't realize I collect stuff. Even if the boats are too large for me to have personally, I want to have those boats. I'm walking past it. And so when I heard that the boats are right here, I was like, that's ordained.
Yeah.
That's ordained.
And in most cases, some people think that Africa is a small place, it's a country, etc. It's not a country. It's made up of what, almost 54 plus, if you include the island countries, almost 57 countries. So Africa is a huge continent, the second largest continent. But sadly enough, if you look at the map of Africa today, with all of those boundaries into different countries, the modern nation states in Africa, guess what? Were, as a result of what were established, let me put it that way, as a result of what European colonization, okay? And let's also note that Africa has a huge diversity in terms of what languages, cultures, etc., and even what are peoples. Being an African myself, it's not all African languages that I understand. Even from my own country, as we're going to see, yeah, we do have a similar, let's say, diversity in terms of what cultures. So there's nothing like one African language. Okay. And if you divide Ghana into two, for instance, this way, the Akan occupy from the middle belt all the way to the coastal section. And so I'm going to narrow down the discussion to the Fanti, who are the most important on the coastal belt, who are used to having canoes and all. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But before I get to the Fanti, it's also important for us to note that, yeah, with the Akan, Dr. Jamal already referred to the Ashanti, Fanti, Ekwapim, etc., Achim, and all. See them as, let me just use this example. Think about English speaking people. You have so many different English talk about British English, American English, Australian, etc. Okay, so those languages are all mutually intelligent. That's the same with Akan languages. They understand each other, but still you would have to understand that those languages have their own idiosyncratic features. Then of course culturally too, yes, their cultures are similar, but of course you understand that those within the interior belt would have a slightly different culture than those in the coastal belt. Okay.
I was moved by Dr. Jamal's comments earlier about how these canoes were, ordained to be here, and I hadn't thought of it that way. But if somehow the Museum of Underwater Archaeology and myself were sort of used in that effort, how blessed am I to have been involved in that. I'm a maritime historian and underwater archaeologist that teaches at Georgia Southern University. Most of my career has not been looking at topics related to African American maritime history, but since coming to Georgia Southern in 2017, I have found myself sort of drifting, let's say, to use a water term, into this area of study, and it's been just an amazing journey for me to become part of that. And they'll do some of the carving with some of the symbols that you'll see there. And then, of course, they're doing the painting for the canoe. From what I understand, depending on the number of people who are involved, it can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks from the moment they select the tree to the moment the last paint is dried to get this out into the ocean. And this particular wood from the Wawa tree is well suited to saltwater, but will not work in freshwater. The microorganisms in the freshwater will attack that particular, it has no defense. The wood has no, that species has no defense. The students themselves, we're really happy. This is the name of all the students that were involved in this project. We were able to get, and he's actually standing up at the stern. It's a double-ended vessel, so sometimes I forget which end is which. But those are all the students who did the research, wrote the exhibit text, recorded interviews with Mr. Brown, and helped bring this exhibit to life. And as I said, they are thrilled. From the emails I got, they were just thrilled that you all were willing to give these boats and this exhibit a home. And so they say, and I say, thank you very much for doing that.
Did you hear that Africa Serves, one African secured 700 acres for a family compound, and that that family compound served the purpose of a vision for generations to come. Did you hear that our story roots us? It forms the foundation for us. Did you hear about the Riggs family and how they recognize that there's a word that the Africans use for humans, that we are the first? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Did you hear about the African Holocaust and the terrors that Africans went through? Did you hear from Dr. Needy about Africa's the second largest continent? It is not a country, it is not a village, it's a continent. Did you hear about the huge diversity in the continent of Africa, where there are hundreds of languages and hundreds of cultures? Did you hear about Akan and the Fante? And did you hear about the music that was being played with makeshift instruments while the fishermen were fishing? Not to give them music to dance with, but rather to energize them. We hear music in our heads and in our souls. We hear the beat of the drum. We gotta move. We can't stand still. It energizes us. That's why African American history, Africana studies is needed.
That's right.
Because we go back and fetch it so we can go forward. The same hopeful bird is moving forward and looking back. And it has an egg in its mouth. Why? Because the egg represents that which comes after us, which comes from us, which comes after us. And we gotta preserve the history. We gotta preserve the culture. We gotta preserve the story. That's what Willow Hill does. We preserve the story. Don't give up, don't stop. You gotta preserve the story. It's necessary. If we don't tell our story, it will never get told right.
I'm Mrs. Ofori from Ghana. This is the chief stool bearer. This is the king, and you notice the king is bowing down to the chief stool bearer. You must serve in order to lead.
Yes.
Isn't that beautiful? Yes.
Kaka miampoku amwasi anansio. Autumn says Rebusi anansi munomfwe. Nansi munomfwe. Oh, yeah. Anansi munomfwe anansio.
Juma.